The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solution Info Show. I'm Marcia Teal, your host. I am so happy you could join us today. We are live. The show is live, brought to you by Arden Courts Memory Care Communities, and we are in our fourth year helping caregivers, bringing to you expert opinions, advice, lots of knowledge from people that can help you on this caregiving journey. So if you're a caregiver or you know a caregiver, this is really important to get educated, to get as much information as you can. It's actually the first step in preparing to be a caregiver. People never had to do it most of the time in their life. If they've never raised children, if they've never taken care of an older parent or had to be a caregiver for somebody else, and all of a sudden you're thrust into this terrible, demanding, stressful, overwhelming job. It's really unthinkable when you come to have to do this thinking you're not prepared. And if you're prepared, that's the best thing that you can do. So today we're going to be talking to an expert in the field of Alzheimer's and dementia. We're going to be calling on to talk to someone in Austin, Texas, who deals with caregivers on a daily basis, day in and day out. And before we do that, I want to go ahead and let you know that this is the place where you can get resources every single week, same time, same place, on your iPhone, your smartphone, your computer, even the iHeartRadio app. You can download the app and get this show any place you are in the entire world, so you won't miss a week of it. And we want to let you know that this show is for you. It's also a place where you can get resources like a free book. As a matter of fact, usually we do this at the half hour, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you now that this is a book that I highly recommend. It's called The 36-Hour Day Book. Now, this book, I'm going to hold it up here on the screen so you can see. It is called The 36-Hour Day Book. And the reason that it's called The 36 Hours is because a lot of caregivers think that 36 hours is what they put into a 24-hour day or more. And it's very, very hard for caregivers. So this is a great book to learn from, to get educated. It's written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. I highly recommend this book. You can get this just for free, just for the asking, and all you have to do is call the toll-free number of 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. Tell them that you heard about the free offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and they'll be happy to get your name and address and mail a copy of this book directly to you, completely free of charge. Highly recommend having this on your nightstand, on your bookshelf. You don't have to read it cover to cover. You can pick chapters that maybe are applicable to you as you come across situations that you want to learn more about. So call today and get this book. Caregivers need as much help as they can get, and there is so many places to get it, but you have to make sure that you're getting correct advice. And, you know, it's good to talk to people, but go to the professionals. Those are the people that have the willingness, the heart, the education, the experience to lead you in the right direction and down the right path. And that's what we bring here on this show. Every week, experts, elder law attorneys, social workers, geriatric care managers, psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists, even real caregivers who are doing the job or have done the job for many years, and they're willing to share their heart to let you know that it'll be okay and how to get through it. What's the best way? There's no right or wrong. Every case is different. You know, someone gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's, that's one person who gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's because every person is different. Their age, their personality, the rate at which they progress through the disease, their environment, their history, so many things, their physical makeup, maybe other physical things that are entering into the picture that you don't even know could be affecting their behavior, their mental status, their emotional status. It's so complicated. And so, again, get educated, be prepared, and that's what this show is all about. So thank you for tuning in today. And we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have our guest and get ready to take some notes because you'll want to stay informed. So we'll be right back after this.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. This is Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I want to welcome you to the show, and I am so happy to have online, waiting at her office in Austin, Texas, the marketing director of the Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Her name is Shauna Wheeler, and she's going to come and share her knowledge and her experience because she helps caregivers every single day. And I'm so glad that she could join us. So let's see if she's standing by on the telephone from Austin. Shauna, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Shauna. Welcome to the Caregiver Solution Info Show. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Well, we're having torrential weather storms here in South Florida, but as they say, the show must go on. So I'm so happy to have you there in Texas and being able to communicate with you today.
All right, terrific.
So you've been helping caregivers for quite some time. You work in a memory care community, the Arden Courts Memory Care Community of Austin, Texas. And let's just talk about some of the things you do on a daily basis. I want to talk about the real life, real stuff. People call you, they want to talk, they want to come in, they walk in, maybe they're desperate. I mean, I know you do this every single day, and I've done it for 18 years. So I think it'd be really good to share some of those stories and let other people hear them, what we experience, so that they feel like maybe they're not the only ones out there going through this, right?
Correct. It's
So
amazing how many people share this burden. I every time I attend a support group meeting or am out at a health fair where caregivers come, I'm overwhelmed with the amount of people that are taking on this burden daily.
So when you say an overwhelming number of people, are you talking like new people like you see every single week or maybe even every day? Because to me, I think it's just growing so much, this terrible disease. More people are living with it. More people, I think, are coming forward more than there ever has before. And it's becoming, like one doctor said, the silver tsunami, that we're not going to be able to keep up and we're not going to be able to handle this from lots of points of view, from, the community, the family, a financial point of view. It's overwhelming. So you see this in Texas, I'm sure, as much as we do here in Florida, because Texas is a great state to retire to, as is Florida. So tell me about the numbers you're seeing and what kind of dementia are they coming to you with? Is it always Alzheimer's or is it some other type form of dementia?
Well, what we've seen an increase of here lately is Lewy body. There's actually, we have a Parkinson's, a capital area of Parkinson's services that has partnered with Lewy bodies. So we are now starting Lewy body support groups and Lewy body information centers, and it's really, I actually witnessed it firsthand. We had a new gentleman come in here. His wife had been taking care of him, and then she couldn't handle it anymore, so the son and his wife stepped in, and it was just, they sat here in my office and told me what a typical day was for them, and I was thinking in the back of my mind, oh, they must be exaggerating. I've never seen anything like that, working with people with just dementia. And I saw firsthand that they were not exaggerating one bit. It's really, it's kind of like dementia is all of a sudden taking on, it's like a root effect where all these roots are coming out, and there's different forms of dementia that are coming out, and it's really hard to kind of scramble and keep up with it all.
So you mentioned Lewy bodies. That's a pretty tough one. It has different signs and symptoms, and one of them being hallucinations, for example. Is it uncommon for people to come into your office and sit with you and share their story and be there for several hours?
Yes.
Yeah, it's common.
It's almost as though they have a safe place to kind of talk about it. And I mean, I just close the door and just let them unload, let them get that off their shoulders, and have somebody that's actually listening to them that sees it and understands that the struggles that they're going through.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I myself have sat with families for 2 and 3 hours listening to their stories, answering their questions, and I think sometimes they need to have that because, like you said, someone understands, because a lot of their friends kind of go by the wayside or shy away from being friends anymore because they don't understand. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. They're afraid. Some of them are actually afraid of the disease itself, not understanding how to cope with it. And I think that having someone to feel safe with, as you said, is so, so important, because it's not healthy to keep all of this, inside or even within a small nucleus, because even families don't disagree or don't agree, and they have a lot of disagreements on what's going on. So tell me how you help this family without going into, obviously, to too many details, but what were some of the things that you could help them with as they sat in your office telling you about their typical day with this Lewy body disease that they're caring for in their family?
Well, luckily, we have a lot of information on it, so I was able to give them all kinds of resources where they could read about it. It's one of the things that I thought was really particularly different about this dementia is that oftentimes the hallucination starts when they take a nap. It's in their sleep, and when they wake up, they think they're still in their dream. And I was able to help them understand, no, he's not lashing out to you. He's still in that dream. He's still confused. Like, for example, he did one where he was in a dream where a bank was being robbed and his wife was stuck in the bank with the baby, and he just couldn't get out of it, and they couldn't understand. They kept almost yelling at him to, no, that's not true. You're not seeing that. Don't, and instead of being combative with them and arguing with them and telling them it's not true, you have to go into their world and actually try and redirect and
try to soothe them without arguing with them, because you're never going to reason with somebody that thinks one thing. You're never going to be able to talk them out of it. So there's other techniques, like you said, to use, because I mean, even when someone with dementia watches a movie on TV, sometimes they think what's happening in that movie is real, and they're going to act out on it. Possibly, if it's a movie about people cheating, marital affair and things like that. I've had wives say that the husband thinks that I'm cheating on him. Maybe he saw it in a movie, or maybe they're watching the news, which CNN is terrible, because it's all usually bad news, and they see the violence and they see the fighting and they see maybe even bad weather coming, where they think that that's happening right there where they are, and it gets them upset and makes them afraid.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you were able to help them, point them in the right direction. Maybe they needed to go see a doctor. Maybe they needed some more tests or follow-up, and I'm sure that if that was the case, that you would make that recommendation. But what about the caregiver? Was this a spouse, or was it adult children who were the caregivers?
It started out just being the spouse, and then it was the spouse and the adult children. So there were three of them trying to juggle all the care needs for him. And I've seen that too, even with not something as difficult as Lewy body, but actually in, say, somebody with FTD that likes to wander. They get out of the house all the time, or they open and close the garage door in the middle of the night. And we had one lady who said, I'd wake up every morning, there'd be a possum in my garage because Mom would open the door or the garage door in the middle of the night, and I wouldn't hear it. It's just I can see the struggle in their eyes when they come in and they talk, because it's overwhelming.
Mhm. Yeah. And everybody has, different stories, different scenarios, but usually it's nothing that you haven't heard before, but it's all new to them. So by listening and understanding, just in that and sharing, and then giving, of course, some recommendations of next steps, how you can help, maybe a support group meeting, maybe going to a doctor, maybe even, how many times have you suggested the caregiver themselves do something for them, like going to see a therapist or taking some time for themselves? That's pretty important too, isn't it?
It's incredibly important. I've seen wives come in here just looking, and husbands just looking exhausted, and when they finally made the decision to have their loved one join our community, and then a week later, just the visual change in them. They're brighter, they're happier. They can come and they can be that person's spouse, or they can be that person's daughter instead of being a caregiver. So it's really And I try to tell them that. I said, even if it's for 2 hours, even if it's, you have a friend or someone from church come and, just sit with them just for a couple of hours so you can get out and shop and do something normal. Because being in it, it's just, I said, it's like a job. If you were employed, would you work 24/7 at your job? And
that's
they
a good
just come
point.
at me like I'm crazy. They're like, no. And I said, well, that's what you're doing as a caregiver, and it is a job for you right now.
Yeah, and it's a unpaid job.
Yeah.
And usually it's not a very rewarding job because you feel that, you're in it, you don't have the support, maybe the family support, especially if your family is not close by. And I know there's a lot of family dynamics that can enter into this where there might be several siblings and one sibling is closer to mom or dad who has dementia, maybe not only physically closer but emotionally closer. So they're the ones that get to be the caregiver, and the other siblings aren't much in the picture, and they don't understand, and that can cause some rifts in the family too. So,
yeah.
That's hard.
Be very
for
critical
them.
when they're judging from afar. I've seen that a lot. Some family members can be very critical of, what do you mean Dad didn't get out today? He loves to go golfing every day, and they don't understand that Dad decided that he was going to break things in the kitchen, and she had to clean up after that, or he was having sundowner, and she couldn't get him out of the house. They don't, unless you're in it and you've got your sleeves rolled up and you're helping out there. It's really hard for them. I do see that with family members, and that is, I just wish we had like a universal education on how to be nice to caregivers.
Yeah, that is something that we all need to understand, that caregivers, go through a lot of things that we don't understand as non-caregivers unless you're a professional. But family members from afar, tend to be judgmental, not always so helpful, don't come to town that often to visit. I had a lady who had married this gentleman, and after a short time after they were married, he actually got Alzheimer's, and she was caring for him, and she had children from a previous marriage. He had children from a previous marriage. So his kids were looking at her like, what's going on? Aren't you taking care of him? What do you mean he's doing this or that? Because now, of course, she's the stepmother to his children. And it's really hard because they're far away. They don't understand. Maybe there's already some animosity going on because of being a stepmother. So she did a wonderful thing. She said, well, I need a break. I need to get away for a few days, 3 or 4 days. So she got his son and daughter-in-law to come down to Florida and stay with their dad while she went to visit her family. And it was so eye-opening to this son and his wife caring for their father, who they were there 24/7. They had no clue what the stepmom was going through until they walked in her shoes and they were there and they saw for themselves. So I think if there's any caregivers, in that particular situation, let the people that aren't understanding, the people that are critical, the people that, just kind of judge, step in your shoes for a few days, and I think they'll see a whole different story.
Mhm. It's also good for that too, just to kind of make it more empathetic, is virtual dementia tour. We give them, and we do them for staff at assisted living places or independent living. We have spouses come in and do them. It kind of puts them in the person with dementia's feet, and it's very shocking. I cried the first time I went through it, because you see it with your eyes, but to actually experience it, it's remarkable.
So, Shauna, describe what the virtual dementia tour actually does, because people, may not understand when you say go through it. It's an experience you go through, but what actually happens? Give me a few examples of what does happen when someone is going to this experience.
Okay, so the first part of the tour is putting on the garb, and we explain as we're giving them the pointy plastic pieces to put in their shoes that replicates what neuropathy feels like, or from somebody who has diabetes and their feet are sore. And then we put on gloves, and what that does is on your dominant hand you put on a big glove, and that makes it very difficult to pick things up. And what that does is it replicates the visual and the depth parts of the brain that are gone. So when you try to reach for something, you miss it.
Or maybe having difficulty buttoning. You can't button your shirt because so well, right? Because you have this big, all heavy glove on. But that demonstrates too how a person with dementia may have difficulty, taking care of themselves or getting dressed. So that
how can you put on pants when you can't tell how far down the pants are because of what's going on with your eyes?
Yeah, what do they do with the eyes to make them not so clear?
Well, there's glasses, and that is like somebody with macular degeneration. So it also does the whole depth thing. That with dementia, it starts as a big bubble around your body, and then it gradually, as the disease progresses, goes up, and it's around your head, so you can see what's in front of you, not what's on the side of you. That's why we approach our people straightforward. And it also makes it you can't see. I mean, it's dark, it's very, very blurry. And then the final part of the garb are headsets that come on. So there's all kinds of things going on in a person with dementia's brain outside of, here, Mom, set the table for me. There's, a bunch of other different things going on in her head. So set the table for me, Mom, is way beyond anything she can do. She gets overwhelmed and could act out because of that. And once the caregivers understand that, it kind of gives them a new understanding of what's going on. Like, okay, don't say, Mom, set the table. Hey, Mom, here's a fork. Can you please put the fork on the table? Breaking it down to the small, simple things that they can do, because people with dementia want purpose too. So we want them to feel good and feel successful in what they're doing by not overwhelming them with things to do.
Right. I know I've been through the virtual dementia tour myself and was a facilitator for others to go through it for that experience, not just family members, but also healthcare professionals, because they want to learn what their clients are experiencing. Mm-hmm. And like you said, you cried. I've seen people cry and just like, oh my gosh, I have such a better appreciation and understanding now of what a person with all of these problems go through. Dementia can affect everything. They, at the time, they put these headsets on where there was a lot of noises, sirens and pounding, and I guess it was supposed to replicate too much stimulation. So there's so much stimulation in the world that it created more confusion, because a person with dementia can get more upset and confused if there's too much stimulation. So that was something that they used, and it was very eye-opening. So these virtual dementia tours, as Shauna said, they are usually open to the public. You can Google to see if there's one being offered in a place somewhere near you. But an excellent idea, Shauna, to suggest people doing that, because it's not just something you read, it's something that you feel and you experience, and you come away with a totally different mindset on that. Mm-hmm. So thank you for bringing that up. That was great.
Oh, no problem.
We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, Shauna is going to be talking with us more about real-life situations. So stay tuned, and we will be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live. It's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We are back, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is a leader in the field when it comes to taking care of people with memory loss and taking care of the caregivers, of the family caregivers. It takes the whole team, and Arden Courts would like to be on your team, and they are offering this free book. As we mentioned at the top of the hour, all you have to do to get it is call the toll-free number of Arden Courts, 888-478-2410, to get your free book. They'll get your name and address and mail it to you. It's an awesome resource. So call them today, 888-478-2410, to get your free copy of the 36-Hour Day book. So we're live, and with me today is guest Shauna Wheeler calling in from the Arden Courts Memory Care Community of Austin, Texas. Hi, Shauna. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Marcia.
So we're talking about real life here and give some examples because, you know, people can read about what could happen, this might happen, and I think people hearing real life stories from people that you have had in your office that you've counseled regarding being a caregiver or what they should do next. So let's continue on that path. You've had some great ideas for caregivers. The support groups are great. Going to a virtual dementia tour somewhere in their community is another great idea. So what are some of the other struggles that you have seen with actual caregivers coming in, and how were you able to help?
Well, one of the biggest things that I hear from people, whether it be the adult children, a spouse, is I always promised my loved one I would never put her in a home. That's a tricky one because, first of all, memory care communities, especially like ours, we're not a home. We're not a nursing home. We're not a skilled home like, 20 years ago what they used to be like. We're a home. We're where people can go to be successful, be safe, go to activities. And I try to explain to them that it's really not in their favor to keep them at home because who's stimulating them socially, who's stimulating them emotionally, who's stimulating them mentally. If they go into, I've heard a lot of people that they said, we'll just go to independent living and Dad will live with Mom. But what they're not understanding is when they go down to the dining room and sit with a group of people, the person with dementia is going to feel the people in those homes can be mean. If Dad was to ask a question, then ask a question again, he's going to get snapped at by somebody, you just asked me that 4 times, and then what's going to happen eventually is Dad's not going to come out of the room anymore. So Dad's not going to be socializing anymore. Where if he went to a memory care community, he can have a conversation with somebody and still have that social interaction, still have eye contact, smile. The conversations might be totally different, but what they're getting out of it is that stimulation, that what they need. They don't need to be sitting in an apartment with the windows closed, with the TV off because they can't follow what's going on the TV, being isolated like that. That coming into a community is actually beneficial for them. And they're not the same person you promised not to put in a home anymore. They're somebody with dementia. So you need to look at the disease and not at a promise that you made to a very healthy person 30 years ago. That's a tough decision to have with people, but it's very necessary sometimes, because they think they're putting their loved one's needs first, but they're actually putting their own guilt and their own fears ahead or above what is really needed.
Yes, and I totally agree with you, because I've had the same situation where a wife says the same thing. I'm going to go to independent living. My husband will live with me. I don't have to worry about cooking. I don't have to worry about cleaning. But she's still going to be the caregiver. So if you're moving to a big community, let's say from your home, and these big independent living, they're big and they have lots of stairs and lots of elevators and lots of hallways and lots of rooms, and if you're in charge of your loved one, which you have to be, you are still there, you're still guiding them, making decisions for them because they can't do it themselves. You're not getting anything out of being in a lovely independent living, because how are you going as a caregiver to be involved with your friends and enjoy your life and take part in all the activities and the recreational programs that they have when you have to watch your husband every single second of every single day to make sure that he doesn't walk outside and drown in the pool, or make sure that he doesn't wander outside and hop in a car with somebody or walk off the property and get lost. So you're right, that is not the solution. And I think a lot of people desperately try to, find a compromise, but there's pros and cons, and they have to think long and hard about what needs to be done. So I'm glad you brought that up too, Shauna, because being a caregiver means doing the best you can by the person that you're taking care of. What is the best for them? And sometimes, and most times, doing what's best for them is also going to be what's best for you, so that you can become a caregiver that's relaxed and rejuvenated and being there for the person, and not be strung out and stressed out and overwhelmed and frazzled, so that you can't be the best caregiver you can be. So great point. That is excellent. What else would you say that you see caregivers struggling with that you would like to kind of shine a little light on?
Well, the burden is on them. The burden to take care of them is 100% theirs. They can't find any help. There are no resources out there. But that's not true. I mean, as our population ages and as dementias, like the gray tsunamis, it's coming. There are so many resources out there. All they need to do is reach out and ask somebody. There are caregiver solution. Or not caregiver solution. There are caregiver support.
Well, yeah, you're right. Caregiver Solutions Info. This show. That's one.
Yes, they have that. So, and as I go to my doctor's office, my neurologist and my doctors that deal with dementia, I give them this, because what if somebody can't leave the house and they need somebody to sound like they're in the same shoes as them? So that's a good little thing for me to bring to my doctors. But they not knowing the resources that are out there, because this is kind of new, and there are a lot of people that don't want to talk about it because it's embarrassing to them for some reason, or they do feel isolated and alone, where that's really not the truth anymore, especially in larger cities like Austin. We are the fastest growing city in the country, and there are all kinds of different resources. There's capital area Parkinson's services. There's now the Lewy bodies group that's coming out. There's all kinds of things that, all kinds of resources, free caregiving. We have the Age of Austin has adult daycare with a sliding pay scale. So finding out what's out there is important to people. And if they don't reach out, it's just, I have women that come in here, and primarily women, but I also have men that come in and they're like, I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm trapped in my house. I go, my son's there with them right now. I don't know what to do. And they're about ready to crumble. And I wish there was a way of letting everybody know that it doesn't need to get to that part.
Well, the good news is they found you, so you
Yeah.
can help, and the good news is that they did reach out and they did find you, so somebody must have told them about contacting Arden Courts, because Arden Courts is a great resource. But you're right. They don't know where to turn, but it's important to do something. Ask questions, ask your friends, ask your doctor's offices, ask questions, look up your local chapter of the Alzheimer's Association in your area, a lot of places that you can turn to. What about the person who understands maybe mentally that, yes, I need to bring my mom to live in a community, but maybe emotionally she's not ready, the mom is ready, she's not ready? What's the risk of waiting too long? And I think this is something that caregivers hang on a little too long sometimes, but there's definitely some risk with waiting. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you see in that regard?
I see that so much. It's not if an event's going to happen, it's when the event happens. And that's when they show up at our door at 3 o'clock in the morning, frazzled, saying, I can't do this anymore. Waiting too long puts them at risk for falling, puts them at risk for getting out and getting lost. We had one man, he was in his pajamas, barefoot, and it was the one time a year that Texas is ever cold, and he was out in the cold kind of thing. And it just, there are so many risks. Some people wait until they're completely wheelchair bound and can't be lifted, can't be transferred, and then a lot of places can't take people like that. So it's the fall risk, I think, is the biggest thing. Or they go to cook and they leave the oven on and a fire starts. All kinds of really scary things can happen if they wait too long. They've really got to educate themselves on the fact that it's about them, their loved one, not about them hanging on more. They've got to put their loved one first. They think they are, but they're actually not when they say, I'm going to wait till past Christmas.
Yeah, don't wait for a crisis, right? So, Shauna, you mentioned that you take the flyers to doctor's offices in your area of Austin, Texas. We actually have a doctor from Austin, Texas on the line right now calling in to share a little of his information, because he's a specialist. He is a board-certified neurologist specializing in cognitive decline, Alzheimer's disease, and other memory disorders. And so I'd like to bring him onto the show via his office in Texas, and his name is Dr. Ronald DeVere. Dr. DeVere, are you there?
I am. I apologize for coming in a bit late. I got into an emergency issue here.
Well, we totally understand that. We understand emergencies. Of course, we're talking about Alzheimer's disease and caregiving, and we just finished talking about don't wait for a crisis to happen. So actually, perfect timing. You segued right into the conversation. So, Doctor, we are so concerned about our caregivers, and you have actually been in private practice for 40 years there in the Austin area, and you see this all the time. How has your practice changed or evolved from 40 years ago when you started, seeing people with memory decline up till now? What has been the most surprising thing to you?
Well, what's surprising to me and what is related to the public, unfortunately, has not changed that much over 40 years. Still to this day, people talk about senility, and we know for a fact from the knowledge and information that's been published that the word senility really should not exist, because as we make changes, one has to really know what happens to our memory, our reasoning, and our judgment as we go from ages 20, 30, 40 to 90. And that's the problem that the public is not aware of, because it's not their fault. And even some of the specialists are not familiar with that thing. And even though there may be some changes, the problem is I don't think it's reached the general public. because I see patients all the time, and they talk about, well, you're just getting old, old-timers disease. And what you really mean by that is, there may be some senility. And that's definitely changed. And because of that concept of senility, that's affected people going to the doctor to be evaluated. It also, it just makes people sort of, well, it's senile, so therefore it's not a big deal. We're getting older. Everybody gets that. And that, the problem is not true. And so, yes, we've learned more, but I don't think that a lot of that information has gone out to the public. The public right now, their biggest fear that relates to memory and that is Alzheimer's. The fear of Alzheimer's disease is in absolutely epidemic proportions. And it's not because people don't care. The problem is that they're not given the facts by other doctors. All you hear about is you're going to have Alzheimer's disease, you have no treatment, and you're going to die. That's all. And that's the message still out there by big organizations. And until the people are better educated, and I'm including myself, that's still going to be a problem. That's a setback in knowledge. In other words, we know a lot more, but we don't carry that out and practice it and use it in our everyday life. And that's where the deficiency is. And that's still not going to be corrected. In my opinion, the most important thing is what happens to our brain as we get older, what are the causes of decline, and Alzheimer's is not a discussion that's full-time for that problem because it only plays a small role. And if people were to understand it's more than that, how many people, for example, and I just found out that hearing loss leads to cognitive decline because I can mention it and talk about it later. I never knew about that 3 years ago. And does it cure if you treat the hearing? It gets better, but it's not a cure, but that's better than saying, well, you got worse because it's Alzheimer's disease. So there's a lot more information that has just not been put into practice and into general knowledge that, I've noticed definitely.
Yes, I've heard caregivers say, well, we went to our primary care physician and, he just asked a couple questions of my husband and saw that he couldn't remember and didn't really know the date, so he gave me a prescription to get filled for Aricept and sent us on our way. And sometimes that's all they get. So, to your
that's
point.
That's correct, and that's not correct.
Yeah, that's not correct. And to your point, we all need to do better, and it starts with actually diagnosis. So I wanted to let everybody know that you have been past chair of the state of Texas, a planning section that established state guidelines it was actually called Best Practices for the Diagnosis, Pharmacologic, and Non-Pharmacologic Treatment of Alzheimer's Disease. So in general terms, Dr. DeVere, what is the best practice for someone to go about diagnosing Alzheimer's disease or other related memory disorder?
Well, here's how I would do it in a short discussion. Say you complain of your family recognizes that your memory isn't very good. And people who have that often don't see that themselves as patients because 90% of the people that I see in my office, I say, why are you here? Oh, my wife or my daughter said my memory is a problem. Do you think there's a problem? No, I don't see anything. And I came here to satisfy. So what do you find out? The doctor says, at least in what I do, is I take the history like everybody else. What do you have? Your illnesses, blah, 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 what medication you're taking. And then as part of the story, everybody here, most doctors use some kind of a screen for, say, memory. And there are 3 or 4 of them over the counter that lots of doctors use, a mini mental test, a Montreal cognitive assessment, and a lot of doctors know about these. So you do those tests, and then you do a physical exam, okay? Balance, coordination, all those things that most neurologists do all the time. Family doctors may not do them as much. And so at the end of the test, we should be able to know. And then the other big thing that's very important, you have the families fill out a caregiver assessment sheet. What does that mean? I don't know anything about the activities of daily living of the individual who's in my office, how they perform at home. Can they pay their taxes? Do they know how to balance their checkbook? Did they drive safely? So this is a questionnaire that has about 40 or 50 questions, and these are activities of daily living that the family knows, but I don't know that. I don't live at the house, because that's very, very important. Not only do you have to know the score on the memory test, that's the least important, because the most important information is what is this person able to do on a daily basis in function. Can they drive a car safely? Can they pay their balance their checkbook? And again, as a doctor, I wouldn't know that. So these forms are called activities of daily living. They're all standardized, 60 questions, and they answer by the caregiver, goes into the waiting room in my office and fills it out. So what do I have at the end of this thing? I have two very important things. Number one, I have the three. I have the story, why they're there. Number two, I have a little memory test that I give them. And number three, I have activities of daily living that I don't know a thing about, but the patients and the caregivers do. Now I have that in front of me. Okay? So if you come in and your score, for example, in your memory test is 29 out of 30, which is pretty normal, but the activities of daily living assessment by the family shows, boy, this guy's got lots of trouble. He can't balance his checkbook and all that, but he scores well on the cognitive test. That doesn't mean a thing. The answer is activities of daily living wins, because most people tell the truth. If they're talking about a loved one, they don't make up stories. If you're a relatively bright person, a college degree, more, you're going to do well on those scores, and that doesn't rule out a thing. Because if the caregiver says, well, his memory is really bad, he can't do this, he forgets events, he forgets conversations, that wins out over a simple a parameter test. And therefore, if the neurological exam is otherwise normal, what we do then is we have who is the referee for the best way to do a cognitive evaluation. Well, the best referee is the neuropsychologist who's trained in neurocognitive testing. It's a 2-year post-PhD, and they can tell at the end of their 4 or 5 hour test, which has to be set up separately, exactly how your brain works for your age, gender, and education, because that's what you're going to need to know. If the neuropsychologist doesn't find anything on a 6-hour cognitive test, it's not likely they're going to have any serious problem of the brain that relates to any cognitive disorder. On the other hand, that's not what we see. We see evidence by the neuropsychologist that this person has a major memory disorder. He may have a major planning and thinking disorder, and he could fit into just a bad memory, or he could fit into dementia, which is much more impaired. That is very reliable. That doesn't tell us the cause, but we know the brain is not working. And then, once you find that out, that's most important, then you need to find out why the brain is not doing its job. And there are lots of causes for that. I'm not going to go through all of them, but everything from vitamin deficiencies like vitamin D, B12. One of the hot things now, I told you, is hearing loss. And if somebody has a hearing loss, you can't say that's unrelated. That may be part of the syndrome. You could have B12 deficiency. What if because you're a drinker? If you drink lots of wine and beer, if you drink more than 2 glasses of wine a night, that increases your risk for getting into trouble with your memory from alcohol, etc. Strokes, Alzheimer's, all those things are all playing a role, and those are tests that we run because once you determine that the cognitive testing is impaired, your next job is you got to find out why are they having that problem. But the biggest problem in our society now in the medical side of brain function is that we're doctors, and again, I'm not picking on anybody, I mean, I have the same trouble, is how good are you in determining whether this person has a problem with brain function or not? And that's where the deficiency is, because a lot of the doctors are not think they're thinking it, but they're not sending them for cognitive evaluation to a neuropsychologist. Very important. And when you're dealing with the brain, you can't mess around. Well, I think you're okay, or, you're just getting old. That doesn't cut that anymore. Those days are gone, and they need to be gone. But the other thing that it doesn't cut is, well, it looks like you got Alzheimer's. You can't verify. The only way you can diagnose Alzheimer's is with a PET scan, which is a specific FTG glucose PET scan, or a spinal tap. You can't make a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease on an MRI. You can suspect it, but no way. And you can't make it on a blood test normally. So you don't see that. There are a lot of people, again, I'm not picking on anybody, but they go in, they said, oh, I think you have Alzheimer's. Here is the drug. I mean, you already mentioned that when you first picked up the phone. So that's where the problem is. And people have to, if you're not sure what to do, refer them to a neurologist or geriatrician who has a lot of experience in the diagnosis of these things. So that's the best I can tell you, and education is crucial.
Yes. Well, Dr. DeVere, that was excellent explanation about a proper way to go about a diagnosis, and I think that, that like you said, that there's a way to do it and a way not to do it, and it's not just assuming. You have to go through all of that in order to get to the root cause, and that was a great explanation. I hope that every family who hears this goes to their doctor and asks for that type of diagnosis and testing from everything that you said, and it would really make things a little more clear to everyone, and then being able to plan better. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today. I know that you've had a super busy, hectic day, but I appreciate so much your time. Dr. Ronald DeVere is board-certified neurologist in Austin, Texas. He specializes in memory loss, Alzheimer's disease, other related disorders. If you are in the Austin, Texas area, look up Dr. DeVere, because he's one of the best out there. And also joining us today was Shauna Wheeler. Shauna is the marketing director from the Arden Courts Memory Care Community of Austin, Texas. And Shauna, I want to thank you for being on the show today and giving us a lot of stories that caregivers can learn from.
Thank you, Marcia.
And Dr. DeVere, any last parting words that you'd like to tell caregivers real quick before we sign off?
Well, the only thing that is not fun, well, it's not fun, and that's not what I mean. The only thing that's the timing is more than 10 minutes. In other words, I'm not a hero, but when I do my workup, just the visit in the office, it takes me 45 minutes to do my exam, my history, the family to fill out the activities of daily living assessment, and at the end of my visit, I should be able to determine if this person does have a problem, and if they do have, we know we're going to need to do the neuropsychological exam in most people.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm sorry, our time is up. I'm so sorry. I would love to talk more with you. Perhaps you can come on another day. Dr. DeVere, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. We'll be back next week with another great show. In the meantime, don't forget, give somebody a hug, because they need it, and so do you. Right. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.